And, we've come a long way with most human afflictions, that can affect the human condition. We can be openly gay in society. We have gay leaders, gay prime ministers, whatever, right? But there still seems to be this tenacious sort of stigma that's associated with mental illness. And what's really amazing is when you think about how many people have been touched by mental illness, you begin to realize how strong the stigma is. So the Canadian Mental Health Association says that about 1 in 5 have been touched momentarily or longitudinally with mental illness. So even if they're wrong by a factor of 2, 1 in 10, you're looking at a city like Vancouver. We're 2 million in this city. So that means if it's 1 in 10, 200,000 are either suffering in silence or have suffered in silence, have not really had a chance to share the experience. Some are lucky, they talk to their friends and family, but predominantly, especially I think with men, you're told to sweep this stuff under the rug. And if you, Bill, came into work with, let's say, a cast on your arm, right away you'd get empathy. People would say, hey, what happened? I also broke my arm skiing and so forth. It's essential for this empathy and this sharing to psychologically mend. And yet with mental illness, not only can you not share, but it's sort of you're led to believe that if I share, things will get worse, right? You can't come in and say hypothetically here, sorry I'm late. I had to hospitalize my mom last night. She had a schizophrenic episode. You just clear the the water cooler. People would be like, why are you telling me this, right? So there's this. I do believe so. Yeah, I think we're at a changing point. I think, as Malcolm Gladwell talks about, a tipping point where something culturally starts to shift. And we're almost at the point where the scales are in our favor. But I don't think you, especially in professional positions, do you talk about mental health issues. You don't go into trial as a lawyer saying you need time off because, you're bipolar.
You're sliding into a deep depression.
Exactly. No. I mean, it's just so, and I've thought a lot about perhaps why the stigma exists, and I've got all sorts of opinions. But one of them basically is, as you have the stigma existing and the fear of ostracization, people stay silent. So then the question is, who's telling the mental illness story? Who are the large story-creating machines in our culture? And in my opinion, it's the Hollywoodization of the mentally ill. And I love being scared. I love going to a horror film. Well, there's nothing more scary than a human monster. So, it started with Hitchcock and Psycho, and he created the slasher film. And, it's very predominant now, right? From Friday the 13th to Halloween and so forth. So basically, the mentally ill are considered, dangerous. They usually walk around with a kitchen knife and they're going into sororities, right? Then the second thing that has the story machine that's creating the image of mental illness is media itself. And I love working for 24 hours, but there's certain aspects that really sort of embarrass me. And one is this sort of it bleeds, it leads. So there's some wacko that does something horrendous. It's discovered he's mentally ill. He makes the front cover, for going postal at work, with a machine gun or something like that.
Well, he'd make the front page or the top story in the news, regardless of whether or not he was discovered to have mental illness. I mean, if somebody, slashes their own child's throat,
yes, exactly,
which happened recently.
I know which one you're referring to.
That's the headline story. I mean, it's not that you're out looking for it
no.
It leads, but when something like that happens, it's likely going to lead the newscast.
Definitely. But I guess what I'm saying is that it does, and so it should. And I'm not knocking media. I'm not knocking Hollywood.
But I think the dilemma is, if it turns out he has a mental illness,
right,
and that is reported, which is natural that it be reported.
Yeah,
then
he announced it.
Then it increases the stigma.
Exactly.
So that it might affect you, because somebody might then discover, oh, you're bipolar too.
Right.
Does that mean you're dangerous?
Well, exactly.
No, but that's how the stigma plays out.
Well, exactly, Bill. No, exactly. So you've got these two powerful story machines, right? The Hollywoodization and media. Both are in the business of making money, and so they should. That's how our economy works. And so they know that the fear response is, something that we've been natural. That's why we like roller coasters and so forth. So a scary movie is a good way to make a buck, and putting something scary at the lead of a newspaper or, a news show also makes a buck. But the point is that those are the stories that are predominantly being told. On the other end of the spectrum, we have brilliant people that have dealt with mental illness, from Sting to Ben Stiller to Robin Williams to Van Gogh to Edward Munch, Robert Munch, Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill. Those guys on the extreme positive side, most of us cannot relate to. I'm not brilliant. I'm not any of these world leaders.
Well, most of us don't know that they suffered a mental illness either. I mean,
exactly.
I think that's the important
The shame existed then, too. In fact, one could argue the stigma and the shame was even stronger then, except for the contemporaries that we're talking about here, like Ben Stiller and right. So I guess what I'm saying is you have these two outlying extremes. You have the extreme negative that we've talked about. We have the extreme right, positive that we've talked about. And then there's the 99.99% of the people in the middle that are just getting on with their life. They're your teachers, your lawyers, your taxi drivers, whatever.
You.
Exactly. But we are shamed into silence because the thing that's making the news are these extremely violent. Let me give you a figure here that gives you an idea of how ridiculous the notion is that mentally ill people create violence. There are more suicides in this country than homicides. There are more suicides in the States than homicides. Sure, the rate is higher because of their lax gun laws, but what most people don't know is that 70 to 80% of gun deaths in the States are self-inflicted. So generally speaking, mental illness creates victims of the person that's dealing with the mental illness. It's not that the mentally ill are the dangerous people out there. So, we're not going to make this political, but instead of Harper spending $5 billion on new prisons, if we could spend a fraction of that on education and getting into the curriculum with teachers, which CMHA is trying to do, and basically having a safe place for children to reach out for help. By the way, suicide is the second largest killer of adolescents, 15 to 25 after cars. Canada is has the third highest suicide rate in the industrialized world. So you got all these,
Well, that's a hard one to figure, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, you don't have to believe me on the facts and figures. Since I've become since I've been endorsed with the Canadian Mental Health Association, they're giving me the facts and figures, and all of this stuff is on the web.
No, I wasn't saying for a minute I didn't believe you. What I'm trying to say is it's hard to understand why that would be in this country.
Because of the stigma. There are theories about light. We're a northern country, and so it's dark and it tends to, the seasonal depressive disorder, that sort of stuff.
I very much enjoyed meeting you. I wish you well, and we'll do our best to keep track of your travels and look forward to seeing you in about a year.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Michael Schrader, when we come